His MAGA cap sparked a storm of ridicule, and the janitor took it a step further by striking him with a mop in front of the crowd. But no one knew who he truly was, until a shocking twist changed everything. It was a noisy Saturday evening in downtown Los Angeles. A small diner, famous for its burgers, buzzed like a beehive. Waiters darted between tables, the clatter of dishes echoed from the kitchen, and the neon glow of street signs streamed in through large windows. Behind the counter, holding a glass of water, stood Tom Williams. He looked to be in his early 40s with a confident demeanor and a slight smile that suggested he was accustomed to being the center of attention. His simple yet quality blue shirt and jeans were unremarkable, but his bright red MAGA cap seemed to radiate a magnetic pull. One couldn't help but notice it. Most of the patrons wouldn't have paid much attention to him if it weren't for the entrance of the janitor. A wiry young man of about 25, with provocatively dyed pale pink hair, emerged from around the corner, gripping a dirty mop. The light caught the glint of an earring in his ear. Eric, that was his name, as revealed by the name tag on his uniform, froze in his tracks the moment he noticed Tom's red hat. A smirk of disdain curled across his face, and he seized the opportunity to start a confrontation. Well, look at this. A real-life Make America Great Again, he said loudly, raising an eyebrow. You think that hat makes you special, huh? Tom slowly raised his gaze. His calmness stood in sharp contrast to the janitor's aggression. Taking a sip of water, he set the glass down and replied evenly, "Just having dinner. Is there a problem?" Eric scoffed, clearly emboldened by Tom's measured reaction. "Oh, there's a problem, all right. You represent everything I hate." A few nearby patrons began to shift uneasily in their seats. Their attention, previously focused on their meals, was now drawn to the brewing tension. Someone discreetly raised their phone, recording the scene. Tom smiled faintly, tilting his head. His tranquility felt almost like a taunt. "Good taste you've got there," he said, with a slight nod. The remark earned a chuckle from the room, but instead of diffusing the situation, it only fueled Eric's frustration. His grip on the mop tightened, and his lips twisted into a sneer. The atmosphere in the diner grew taut with anticipation. Eric, as though he were suddenly the star of the show, raised his voice to drown out the quiet murmur of the restaurant. "Tell me, how much do they pay you to wear that stupid hat, or are you paying them for the privilege?" His taunt dripped with sarcasm, but Tom remained unshaken. Raising the glass of water, he took another sip before calmly placing it down. "Less than you make cleaning floors, but it works for me," he replied dryly. The room erupted in soft laughter, with someone murmuring, "Good one." Eric, however, was in no mood for jokes. His face flushed red with anger, and the mop in his hands trembled. Stepping closer to the counter, he leaned in aggressively and barked, "You think you're better than everyone else, huh? Think you can just stand here with that hat and smirk? I could throw you out of here myself." The words rang loud and defiant, but Tom appeared utterly unbothered. He tilted his head slightly, maintaining his calm demeanor as he replied, "Go ahead, kid. Impress me." Eric hadn't expected such a response. His eyes flashed with irritation. Determined to assert his dominance, he raised the mop in a dramatic motion and swung it with force. The filthy mop head smacked against Tom's jeans with a wet slap that echoed through the diner louder than any other sound. The crowd gasped in unison. Several patrons immediately whipped out their phones, filming the unfolding drama. For a moment, the entire diner fell silent. But once again, Tom defied expectations. Instead of reacting with anger or outrage, he leaned back against the counter with a faint smirk. His voice was calm but laced with a chilling edge. "You've made your choice, kid." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, leaving Eric and the gathered onlookers in tense silence, bracing for what would come next. In the tense silence, as if on cue, the restaurant door swung open with a loud bang. A tall man in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit strode in. His impeccably polished shoes gleamed under the overhead lights, and a photographer followed close behind, his professional camera already aimed at the unfolding scene. The man moved with the confidence of someone who owned the place, or perhaps the whole city. Eric, still clutching his mop, froze in place. His face turned an unhealthy shade as if he instinctively realized things were about to take a turn for the worse. The man in the suit approached the counter where Tom stood, extended his hand, and with a wide smile, said loudly, "Mr. Williams, are you ready for the press conference?" The words rang through the diner like a thunderclap. A few people in the crowd gasped audibly. One patron whispered, "Wait, Tom Williams? Is that the Tom Williams?" "Yes, that's him," another murmured excitedly, fumbling for their phone. For a brief moment, the entire room seemed frozen in time. Only Tom remained composed, shaking the man's hand and thanking him for his punctuality. Turning back to Eric, Tom wore his signature half-smile, a mixture of humor and unshakable calm. "You wanted to throw me out?" Tom asked slowly, his voice soft but with a clear edge. "Well, let's start with you." Eric stood like a statue, his knuckles white around the mop handle. His face betrayed everything, from dawning horror to the desperate search for an excuse. Someone in the crowd, now recording the moment, muttered, "This is pure gold." The photographer continued snapping photos, while the man in the suit added smoothly, "Everything is on schedule, Mr. Williams. The audience is waiting." Tom nodded, but before stepping away from the counter, he addressed Eric again. "Don't worry, kid. I'll find you a new job, maybe on another planet." The crowd burst into laughter. Eric turned pale, unable to respond while the cameras caught every second. Eric, finally grasping the gravity of his mistake, began stammering incoherently, "Listen, I didn't mean... It's all just a misunderstanding." But Tom, still wearing his calm smile, raised a hand to stop him. "I believe in freedom of speech," he said, looking directly into Eric's eyes. "But freedom of speech doesn't give you the right to be aggressive or belittle others, and definitely not to raise a hand." The silence in the room was deafening. Tom shook his head slightly, as if delivering a verdict. "You're fired." The two words struck like a bolt of lightning. The restaurant erupted with emotion. A few patrons clapped. Someone shouted, "Serves him right!" Eric stood frozen, speechless, staring at Tom before lowering his gaze. The mop slipped from his hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Tom turned to address the gathered crowd, raising his hand slightly to command attention. His voice was firm, yet devoid of hostility. "There's room for everyone here," he began, pausing to let the words sink in. "But there's no room for hatred." The crowd nodded in agreement, with someone shouting, "Now that's a speech!" The man in the suit signaled to the photographer, who took a few more pictures as Tom confidently headed for the exit. But before leaving, Tom turned back to Eric one last time. "I hope you've learned that judging people by a hat is a bad idea, especially when they're your boss." The room exploded with laughter. Eric stood silently, his face pale, as the realization hit him. He was about to become an internet meme. Later that evening, a video of the entire scene went viral on social media, racking up millions of views. Tom became the hero of the day, celebrated as a model of poise and wit. Eric, on the other hand, became the meme of the week. One of the most popular comments under the video read, "Don't judge a book by its cover, or a boss by their hat. The story ended not only as a lesson for Eric, but also as an inspiration for countless viewers who admired Tom's composure and sharp humor.